Story 1. Camping. I loved being outdoors, but I hated everything else. I am a city girl. I will always book a cabin from now on. Story 2. Being a mother. My daughter is my world and I would do anything for her. However, I am not built mentally, emotionally, or physically for multiple children. She has brought so much to my life, and I have learned many things about myself. I am definitely part of the one and done club. Story 3. I watched the Lizzie McGuire movie a lot as a kid and always told myself I would buy a moped and ride it around a big city. I did that and I absolutely hated it. Oh my God, worst decision. Terrifying, cold, vulnerable. Hated it. But now I know. Story 4. I wanted a camper van so much. I dreamt about it. I got my hands on an old Federal Express van. I am 6 feet 7 inches tall and about 400 pounds. I stepped into it, imagining how I would plan to upgrade it and make it comfortable. Then I immediately realized these dreams are for small humans. Not me. Story 5. My first roller coaster was at an amusement park called Silver Dollar City. I tried a ride called the Powder Keg. I nearly lost control of myself at the same time. I felt like my soul was left behind when my body went into turbo mode. When the ride was over, my hands had gripped the rail so tightly that small lines were visible on my fingers. I could barely walk a few seconds afterward because my legs were shaking. Never again. Story 6. Skiing. Everyone I know loves it. I tried it at least a dozen times and even got kind of good at it, but everything about it was torture. Long drive to the mountain, freezing all the time, endless lift lines, getting run into by other skiers, and the constant risk that I could die at any moment while doing it. It was also very expensive. Then I realized that no one was making me do it, so I could just stop. I never skied again. What a relief. Story 7. Concerts. Sweaty, bright, and too loud. I am squished between strangers who often smell unpleasant and sing so off-key that you can barely hear the actual artist. Story 8. I was trained on driving a boom lift this weekend. I always wanted to get certified. Training was outside, and the winds were gusting at 20 miles per hour. Even though I was harnessed up, being 30 feet up in the wind bouncing around in a boom lift was not my cup of tea. At least I passed. Story 9. I only went cave exploring once, and I'm not sure if I would do it again. Tight spaces, darkness, walking in active water, and having to worry about slippery rocks. Now that I describe it, never again. Story 10. Having a backyard. I thought I would grow plants and have barbecues, but the upkeep is a time-consuming pain. I discovered I am not the outdoor type, and now it is overrun with weeds. Story 11. Those duck or swan-shaped pedal boats seemed like a great romantic date idea at first, but they are the most awful and ineffective way to move about in water. Just get a canoe or kayak instead. Story 12. Camping. I love hiking and being outdoors, so in theory I think I should love camping. However, I have found it to be really uncomfortable. Takes too long to pack, requires too much gear, it's difficult to wash your hands, and you have to crawl out of your warm, cozy sleeping bag and hike to a latrine at an odd hour when that is the last thing you feel like doing. Story 13. Skydiving. I completed 5 static line jumps, and on the 5th jump, I experienced what I can only describe as the cumulative willies. That was it for me. Story 14. Buying my dream car. There I am in 1982, with a beautiful white Porsche Turbo Whale tail poster on my wall. I have watched the entire evolution of the models since then and literally lusted after them. Finally, I have retired and saved enough money for a brand new Porsche 992, and I waited through the waitlist. Sure enough, it is the best car ever. I had a Carrera 4S and took it everywhere. Several road trips, track days, getting groceries, all seasons. As it turns out, I really cannot handle being so attached to a material item. Always looking back at the parking space, worrying about when it was going to be dented, always stressing about every little bug that hit it on the highway. The car was beautiful, but it just did not fit my lifestyle. I was fortunate to own it, but now I am much happier with a Volkswagen Golf R. Story 15. Going to a spa and massage place. Turns out I hate being touched and my calves are ticklish. I spent what felt like hours resisting the urge to kick back. Meanwhile, my friend was asleep, snoring on the table next to me. Story 16. Living next to in-laws is challenging. The mother-in-law and father-in-law ignore legitimate problems, while the brother-in-law and his wife neglect their children and allow chaos. It is impossible to reason with these people. My son's cousin sprayed paint on my son's face 3 hours ago. The parents have not disciplined their child and have not apologized to my son or me for damaging our property. For clarity, my son is 6 years old, and his cousin is 8. Who lets their child play with spray paint? Story 17. Snowboarding. I even gave it another shot when I was about 20 years older and better coordinated, but no, not for me. Story 18. Roller coasters sounded so fun, but then I actually tried 3, and I fainted because of the severe pain I felt from each one. I was hoping they would be different, and I did it for my ex because he really liked roller coasters. Story 19. Helping someone with money and then being disrespected afterward is the principle, not just because of money. Story 20. Camping. I found out my idea of camping is waking up in the morning and going across the street for breakfast. Story 21. Cruises. All prior to COVID-19. 2 without children felt like a breeding ground for germs even then. Sleep was impossible. Gave it one last shot with children on a Disney cruise. One of my daughters caught a nasty bug. The end of cruises. Full stop. Story 22. Probably being unemployed on purpose. Let me explain. I had enough money to live off and get by for about a year. I thought I would do all these things, travel, etc. It turns out living expenses took a lot of that. I spent a lot of time just waking up late and doing not much. I need to be doing something, anything, busy work to keep my mind fresh and active. I experienced a low-key retirement and found out quickly I don't have any hobbies or activities to keep me going. I would love to go back to the workforce, but part of me does not because of burnout. Anyway, I wanted to experience this, and I did. But next time, I would have a project going. Story 23. Rock climbing was surprisingly easy. I was able to complete the gym's easiest 3 routes without prior experience. Even with chalk on my hands, I got very bad blisters on my palms. A neighbor invited me to go, and it was fun, but my hands took 2 weeks to fully heal. Story 24. Skydiving. I did not have a helmet. The rush of wind by my ears hurt a lot, and I felt very sick after touching the ground. Story 25. Camping, for me, was nothing like the relaxing, back-to-nature experience everyone described. I hated everything about it. Sleeping on rocks, bugs everywhere, no shower. I spent half the night convinced every sound was a bear coming to get me. I woke up at 5 a.m. because birds are loud, couldn't make coffee properly, and realized I would rather pay $200 for a hotel room than spend another night pretending dirt is comfortable. Some people are outdoorsy. I am not. Give me air conditioning and room service. Story 26. Dating. I spent the first half of my 20s in a relationship. I honestly always had a little regret that I had never gotten to date around. When we finally split up, I was optimistic and even a little excited to date. Turns out dating is difficult. It was like a series of job interviews where I had to buy the interviewer dinner. It felt less like putting my best foot forward and more like playing the role of a circus monkey dancing for everyone's enjoyment. It felt fake, and most people I dated just wanted to see how much they could get from me. To be clear, I enjoyed the single life. It was just the dating I hated. If I am ever single again, I will refuse to actively date. Story 27. Living alone. Loved the idea. Hated the silence. Started talking to my plants as if they owed me rent. Story 28. Dating a person in an ethical non-monogamous relationship. This was before I understood that I am a demisexual. I cannot have feelings or be intimate with someone who does not feel anything for me. Story 29. Falling in love. I am a different person. I get waves of emotions that feel overwhelming, and I sometimes hurt myself or others by being jealous or insecure. I would rather be friends and not complicate life anymore. Story 30. Attending a professional boxing fight in a stadium was less enjoyable than watching it on television. The crowd seemed intoxicated and aggressive, as if looking for a fight themselves. Story 31. The last 40 years of my life have passed. The outlook for the next 30 is not looking too great, but I promised myself I would stick it out until 70. When I hit 70, I plan to leave this place. I will go to the Hoh rainforest and wander into the mossy, fern-covered expanse. I will find a nice place to sit with a great view, take some pills, and fade away. Hopefully, the forest will consume my body before anyone finds it. Hopefully, it will never be found. Though a mostly decayed skull sitting in a bed of moss with a banana slug crawling on it would make an amazing photograph. Story 32. Having a wedding. I loved doing my wedding planning spreadsheet. Then I had to actually assemble the wedding. When I arrived at my wedding, I remembered I do not like attention, I do not like having my picture taken, and I do not like having many small conversations with people. However, I am sure if I had not done it, I would always have fear of missing out about it. Story 33. Being a certified nursing assistant. I am a caregiver for my daughter and have received training to be a certified nursing assistant. I am committed to caring for my daughter. She is 23 now. However, the thought of caring for strangers is not appealing. Certified nursing assistants are greatly underappreciated. I understand why certified nursing assistants often become nurses for better pay, and then pass the difficult work down to the certified nursing assistants. In addition, patients can be quite difficult. Story 34. Traveling to Florida. I do not know why the state is so popular. It is very hot and humid. Miami is like Beverly Hills in my opinion, unless you are an influencer or a very extroverted person. Story 35. New Orleans during Mardi Gras. Don't get me wrong, it was great and a must-do at least once. But once was enough for me. This was more than 20 years ago, but there were so many people on the streets you could lift your feet off the ground and still remain standing. That's how tightly people were wedged together. Took an hour to move 10 feet with the crowd's permission, of course. It wasn't always that way, just at certain times. Also, the side streets were less crowded but just as much fun. It's an experience for sure, especially as a younger adult, but too many people for my comfort level. Story 36. Concerts. I thought I would love seeing bands I like live. It turns out my dislike for crowds is much stronger. Story 37. Hot yoga was unpleasant. People were sweating excessively, which was off-putting. I left before the session ended. Story 38. I feel horrible for saying this, but I would never have any more children again. I have 4 children and always wanted 3 to 4 kids. My husband said we should stop at 2. I love all of my children so deeply and dearly, but it has been the hardest time of our lives, and we have no family in the same country as us. Part of why I wanted a larger family was so they could grow up together. And I had this Home Alone or National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation fun family that I wanted. I don't love parenting 4 children, and I thought I would. The emotional, physical, and community support needed is so real, and we absolutely do not have that. We do the best we can and know how, but it's just not what I expected. Hearing the romanticized version of having many children may come from people who have that social support system, family in the same country as them. Yes, my husband and I chose to have 4 children, so we try to do the best we can. At the end of the day, children are a blessing, and we were obviously chosen by God to have 4 of them. Story 39. Skydiving. I liked it the first time I did it, but I think I prefer my feet being on the ground. Story 40. Moved to Napa. Horrible place with unpleasant people. Lost 30 gigabytes in the move but could not wait to get back to Pacifica. Story 41. I guess I am lucky. I really cannot think of anything. Maybe some things I thought I would love, but they were not quite as great as I had anticipated. However, nothing was bad enough to hate. Story 42. An M in an MFF. Being the center of attention and having to perform emotionally and physically for each person separately was way too much. It is really hard to be authentic about your passion for one person and then do it again for another without making it seem inauthentic. I am convinced it is impossible. Story 43. Did this with yoga and could not agree more. Closing my business was the best decision I ever made after 5 years, and everyone keeps saying sorry. Meanwhile, I have never been happier. Then you actually get to enjoy it again without the monetized aspect and without people expecting you to do it and love it no matter what because you are good at it and it seems better than other 9 to 5s. Story 44, Three-Way. I have participated in one 4 times and barely felt satisfaction. I was just very drunk and awkward. In 2 out of 4 instances, I did not even get an erection. The first time, I lost my virginity. Story 45, Skiing. I love sports and being active, so I thought I would enjoy it. I also enjoy snowshoeing, so I expected skiing to be similar. I wanted to fall in love with skiing, but I have been miserable the 3 times I have gone. I am also genuinely scared of breaking a bone because I have little control over the skis. Story 46, Sailing. I love the ocean and being near it, but I get violently seasick. I thought I was going to die. Story 47, Skiing. Actually, I have done it a few times and took lessons, hoping it would grow on me. It did not. I find it terrible. Never again. Story 48, Zip lining. Perhaps it was just the one I did, Fox Tower at Foxwoods. I was very excited to go, but in the end, it was quite disappointing. I think the elevator ride to the top took longer than the zip lining itself. It was so fast that you could barely enjoy the scenery. The entire experience was somewhat of a letdown. Story 49. You know how some cities have a big event on the 4th of July where you can sit outside and watch a fireworks show while a live orchestra plays patriotic music? As an amateur musician, I have always wanted to play that gig. One year, I had the opportunity to play as a substitute for a band in a larger city near me. I thought it would be fun. It was hot, buggy, and miserable. Afterwards, I was stuck in traffic for hours. Story 50. Learning to ride a motorcycle. I barely passed training because I was very fearful. Unfortunately, I had bought a motorcycle beforehand and have never ridden it in the past 3 years. I am terrified of it. Also, as a single mother of 2 children, what was I thinking? Story 51. Playing Dungeons and Dragons. It might be fun after a while, but I felt very anxious actually doing any role-playing. Story 52. I am constantly trying to figure out how a simple question, such as the one posed by the author, is answered by some with no relevance to the topic. I thought that the question was about what we thought we would love to do and experience, but it taught us that we did not. Story 53. Attending National Football League games. I worked for a company that had 2 sets of season tickets for a National Football League team. I really liked football at the time, so I thought it would be great. What a pain. There is no such thing as just going to the game and going home. It is an hours-long ordeal with the traffic, the parking, and then trying to get out after the game. A complete waste of a perfectly good Sunday. Story 54. Frolicking through a field of flowers. So many bugs, and I love bugs, just not in my eyes, hair, or mouth. Story 55. Randomly snorkeling a sunken ship. My first experience with a ship underwater freaked me out. This is especially odd because I always dreamed of becoming an underwater archaeologist. Story 56. Working on a farm in Australia. Loved the idea ever since watching McLeod's Daughters. I lasted 1 week and then fled back to Melbourne. Story 57. Scrapbooking is enjoyable, but I am too much of a perfectionist, and it is an easy trap to fall into shopping rather than crafting. I prefer taking photos and doing other crafts. I gave away all my supplies and I felt a weight lifted. Story 58. Dublin. I had a great time, but I honestly thought Dublin was a much dirtier city than Paris. I would definitely go back now that I know what to expect. Story 59. Working as a therapist, I love helping people, but it is very draining and there is a burnout culture. If I wanted to focus on paperwork all day, I would stick to administrative work. Thankfully, I found out I can still help people in other careers. I also thought I would love getting my Doctor of Philosophy degree because I enjoy learning and research, but the idea of presenting a dissertation that can determine the success of all that time and money spent is disheartening. Story 60. Free soloing. As someone who climbs frequently and loves climbing, it sounds fun. Go climb something really easy for you and do not worry about placing protection. Realistically, about 20 to 60% of the time spent doing roped climbing is actually spent rigging protection systems. But without a rope, Even that 5.7 move just makes me very nervous. Even some 5.5 feels sketchy, more doable but still sketchy. Not for me. Story 61. Hiking alone in the forest. I love going on hikes with my partner, and I have done many alone because I travel solo frequently. However, at this point, I much prefer trails with a nice wide path, benches, a kiosk for snacks, and a regular bus connection. I do not want to inhale insects for hours, struggle with muddy, slippery terrain, and have a view of only trees. I also do not want to lose GPS signal and feel like I might be kidnapped because there is no one around. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.